Brian Stevenson said, "We have never really confronted the legacy of slavery, and our history of racial injustice has compromised on all of our abilities to see each other fairly." The legacy of slavery. Tell me how you see it and how we confront it.
So for me, it's very frustrating. I don't know where all my Senate colleagues go home, but I go home to an inner city. I go home to Newark, New Jersey. I love my community, love my city. But what folks don't understand is they often talk about things as if they're so far away, but they don't understand that these things have been compounded upon each other generation after generation. Slavery, one of the most violent periods of terrorism in United States history, was the period right after Reconstruction, where there was massacres on American soil of black business people, black elected massacres. Then on top of that, replaced with the vicious white supremacy of Jim Crow. That infected American policy. People don't understand that from the GI Bill to fair housing, all of these things were put forth in a time that we celebrate FDR's alphabet soup, but don't understand that all of these were opportunities that were often constricted or denied for African Americans. I see the legacy in Newark every day of bigoted housing policies that went well into the 70s. My family stories as a child being denied housing, having to get a white couple to pose as us. This legacy is alive today, and we can't be defensive about it. We can't ignore it and hope it goes away. We have to have the courage to confront with love what has gone on in our country's history and address that injustice so that we can be the country that we all hope and want to be.
Listen, 40% of the slaves at least came through Charleston. So our state, I always say we have a provocative history without any question. It's demonstrated by the first landing of so many of the slaves that came to America. And you can see that manifesting throughout our state. I do think we have to have an equilibrium as we have that discussion, because if all you can see is the pain and the misery of our past, it is very difficult to look into the future with hope and opportunity. In our state, as I looked through the challenges just June 17th last year, Emmanuel Church, the power of forgiveness is the hope of freedom for this nation.
The power of forgiveness
is the hope of freedom for this nation. I completely understand that. I've lived it. I've seen it manifest in the streets of Charleston. We have seen people come together in our state. There's something about a crisis that brings out the best of you. And
even your Republican colleagues had come around to the idea the Confederate flag had to be.
Well, I would suggest that it was my Republican colleagues in South Carolina who led for the removal of the Confederate flag, and it was my Democrat colleagues who put it up in South Carolina. So it's the evolution of the human heart that made that possible. It wasn't partisan politics. It was actually the evolution of the American heart, and specifically the South Carolina conscience. If we hope for a better nation, we'll have to rediscover love. We'll have to rediscover love for each other. We'll have to rediscover love that is not an emotion, but that is an action, that it requires putting me after you. If we find that, and I think we will, our nation will present to the world the best of who we are, the best of who we can be.
But Charlie, I want to be clear. You can't move forward if you're not willing to confront the wounds of the past. You cover up wounds, you try to ignore them, they're going to fester and grow worse. But if you give attention to them, if you acknowledge them. This is why you see this in other countries with truth and reconciliation efforts. Exactly, talking about what happened and what went forward. And that's the thing, we can't try to homogenize. And this is, even museums like this, I know they're going to tell the truth about people like Martin Luther King. A friend of mine talks about the Santa Clausification of Martin Luther King, that he's become this happy figure. He was deeply unpopular. He truly shook the norm in this country. People like Muhammad Ali, everybody wants to say how much they love him. He was deeply unpopular in this country for the stands he took. And we can't not warp our history to make us feel good. We have to confront the truth of history. There were
conflicts within the black community too, from Malcolm X to the NAACP.
No one should, I think Cory says it well, no one should whitewash our history. Those of us who've lived it in the South, especially in South Carolina, every day we have reminders of where we've been, where we are. not often enough. We sat down with President Perez in Israel. One of the things he said was, we don't have enough teachers of the future. And so while I am absolutely a lean forward kind of guy, an optimist, it's not because I'm ignorant of my past. It's because every day when I go back home, South Carolina, we celebrate our past.
And
we
it teaches
celebrate the pain of our history.
And it teaches
but it always instructs me.
Yeah. As this museum will open in September 24th, it accomplishes, it reminds us of. What would be your deepest hope that this will accomplish and represent?
I hope that one of the beauties of this museum being here will be an understanding and appreciation of the depth of the pain, agony, and tragedy of slavery. I hope that the suffering from decade to decade to decade to decade will be understood in a very real and tangible way. I hope that the weight of the past will slow your gait and bow your head. And as you walk out here, I hope that the sense of freedom and a sense of expectations will overwhelm you, and that you will feel individually responsible for making America the most amazing country for every single citizen in our land.
That's beautiful.
It was beautiful.
Very beautiful. So I'll just make it even simpler. Go past the Washington Monument, go to the Jefferson Memorial. That's a man who had a very complicated relationship with black folk, and painful one with black folk. But if you read his words at the end of the Declaration of Independence, he said, in order for this country to make it, for us to succeed, we have to have an irrational commitment to one another, that we have to pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. That necessitates courageous empathy. It necessitates leading with love. It necessitates a level of citizenship where we understand that I need you as much as you need me. And I'm hoping that this museum helps us get and reignite that principle, that ideal in every one of Americans, where we begin to understand that when I see you, I don't see an other, I see myself. I see my destiny is interwoven with yours, and I need to sacrifice for us. I need to pledge to each other that my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. If we are Americans that manifest that level of sacred honor, our country, there's nothing we cannot achieve together. The old African saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I hope this museum can bring us together in that way.
Equally eloquent. Thank you, Senator Booker.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator
Yes,
Sen.
sir.